The phone rang in the quiet night, sharp as a knife through the restless sleep of my small, shabby apartment in Chicago. I reached for the phone, the bright light of the screen shining on my tired eyes. Dad appeared, a name that had once been my whole childhood world, now evoking only the bitterness of a cold cup of coffee left on the table. His voice was hoarse through the speaker. "Ryan, the company is going under. You are my last hope." Outside the window, the city lights flickered through the cracks in the glass, as if mocking me. A 28-year-old man, once the pride of my family, now unemployed with a pile of student debt. I clutched the phone tightly, not expecting that the call would drag me into a whirlwind of family drama and eventually help me understand my father's feelings and find myself through relentless efforts. It all started a few months ago, when I was struggling to pay the rent as a freelance writer. My dad, Jack, owned a small furniture company in suburban Milwaukee, a family legacy whose walnut tables had graced hundreds of Midwestern homes. But the pandemic hit hard. Customers disappeared, orders stopped coming, and Dad, in his conservative mindset, let the company slide into bankruptcy. He called me one rainy afternoon, his voice shaking. "Ryan, I need you to come home. You're a business school student, you're smart, you can save the company." I wanted to refuse, to scream that I wasn't the hero who could fix his mistakes. But the image of my dad sitting in the wood shop, stroking boards with that proud look in his eyes, made it impossible to turn away. I quit my job, moved back to Milwaukee, and threw myself into saving the company like a madman. I redesigned the website, negotiated discounts with suppliers, and convinced a major Chicago furniture chain to place a huge order. I lived on cold coffee and dry bread, sleeping less than 4 hours a night for 3 months. The results were worth it. Sales skyrocketed, the company was saved, and my dad patted me on the shoulder and said, "Son, you're my savior." I smiled, thinking that all the sacrifices had finally paid off. But the joy didn't last long. A week later, in a small office filled with the smell of wood and polish, I sat across from my dad, took a deep breath, and said, "Dad, I think I deserve a share of the profits from what I've done. I need money to pay off my debts and start over." Dad's eyes darkened, like the Milwaukee sky before a storm. "Money? You dare ask me for money? This is a family business, not your ATM." I was stunned. I had given up everything to save the company, and now he considered me greedy? The argument exploded, the words cutting like knives. Finally, he slammed the table and shouted, "If all you care about is money, don't expect a penny from my will. You're cut out of it." I left the office, heartbroken. Back in Chicago, I blocked my dad's phone number, deleted him from all contact, and vowed never to look back. The days that followed were a void. I felt like I had lost not only my family, but also my faith in what had once been sacred. But I didn't break down. I went back to writing, building my reputation from scratch, telling myself that if my dad didn't need me, I could stand on my own. As time passed, I slowly found my way back to the light. One day, while sitting in my favorite coffee shop in Wicker Park, my laptop open in front of me, I received an email from a major publisher. They wanted me to write a business book based on my experience saving my dad's company with a 6-figure advance. I read the email with trembling hands, not believing that luck was coming. I decided to write that book, not for revenge, but to tell my story, with all the truth and emotion. When the book came out, it shot to the top of the New York Times. I stood at a book signing in Chicago, watching hundreds of people line up, feeling like I had just come out of the shadows. Then one afternoon, I got a text message from a friend. "Ryan, I just saw your dad in Milwaukee. He was holding your book, sitting in his woodworking shop, crying." The text message included a photo. Dad sitting in an old chair, holding my book, his eyes red as he looked at the cover, where I had written a dedication. "To Dad, who taught me that family is about more than money, but what we build together." I was speechless. In that moment, I understood what Dad was thinking. He hadn't cut me out of his will because he hated me, but because he feared losing the meaning of the company, not the money, but the legacy he wanted to leave me. I was wrong to ask, and he was wrong to push me away. But my book reconnected us, not with words, but with understanding. The phone rang, a text message from the publisher. "Ryan, Disney wants to buy the rights to your story for a movie. What do you think?" I smiled, but didn't respond right away. I knew I needed to do something first, confront my dad, not to prove anything, but to heal. In the days that followed, I threw myself into preparation. I wrote a 3-page handwritten letter recounting my struggles in Chicago after leaving Milwaukee, my sleepless nights writing a book not just to succeed, but to understand myself. I sent the letter, not expecting a reply, but hoping my dad would read it. I continued working with the publisher, pitching the idea for the screenplay. A story not just about business, but about family, about mistakes and forgiveness. I told myself, if my dad didn't respond, I would still move forward. But I wanted him to know I wasn't angry anymore. Then one night, as I was revising the final chapter of the script, the doorbell rang. I opened the door, and there stood my dad, holding the letter I had sent him, his eyes red like the one my friend had taken. He walked in, his voice choked up. "I'm sorry, Ryan. I was wrong to think you only wanted money. The company was my life, but I didn't see that you gave it a new life." I looked at him, feeling the cuts in my heart slowly heal. "I'm sorry too, Dad," I replied. "I didn't understand that you wanted to keep it for me, not for the money. I was wrong to ask for it without thinking about your pride." We sat down and talked all night. My dad told me about his early days, about the first desk he'd made by hand, and how he'd always dreamed of me taking over. I told him about my lonely days in Chicago, about the book that saved me from my own pain. When morning came, I picked up my phone and read the message from the publisher. I turned to my dad and smiled. "Disney wants to make a movie about our story. I want you to do it with me, not to make money, but to tell our family's story." He took my hand and laughed, the first smile I'd seen from him in years. "Son, I would be proud to stand next to you on the red carpet." Over the next few weeks, we got to work on the project. I worked with the writing team, making sure the story kept its heart, not just the business success, but the healing between father and son. Dad came to Chicago a few times, bringing old interior drawings for reference, and we laughed at the silly arguments we'd had. When Disney sent the official contract, I signed my name, and next to it was Dad's, Jack Thompson, as a confirmation that our legacy wasn't in our will, but in what we'd created together. My ending wasn't just a huge success on the silver screen. It was a moment when my dad and I moved past the past and into a future where our story would inspire millions.